Dear brothers and sisters in Christ, good morning, happy Tuesday. Today, Tuesday, December 14th, Tuesday of the third week of Advent. We're about 10 days away from Christmas. Christmas celebrations are coming soon. The day of our salvation is near at hand, so we need to rekindle our commitment to get ready for Christmas, to get ready to welcome Jesus among us. We need to renew our commitment to welcome Jesus in our hearts, in our lives. And so as we continue our journey in this season of Advent, today we're invited to reflect on this passage of the Gospel, a very interesting one. In this passage of the Gospel for today, Jesus tells a parable about two sons and a father. The father tells the son the same thing. He wants both of them to go and work in his vineyard. The first one says, "No, I'm not going," and then he changes his mind and ends up going. The second one instead says, "Yes, I will go," but then instead he doesn't go. And so Jesus asks his listener, who did his father's will? Which son did the father's will? And they answer the first one, who originally said no. At the beginning he said no, but then he changed his mind. The father is God, clearly in the parable. And originally the son who said no ended up going to work in the vineyard were sinners. And Jesus points to later on when he explains the parable. Jesus doesn't really explain the parable, but he points to the fact that the first son were actually tax collectors and prostitutes who were far away from God, but then returned back to God. The second son, instead, Jesus didn't say clearly, but is hinting at the fact that the second son, who said yes at the beginning and then changed his mind and didn't do his father's will, the second son were actually religious leaders of Israel who claimed to be doing God's will, but instead were following their own ideas and plans. They had their own agenda, so to speak. Why? Prostitutes and tax collectors, when John the Baptist came, they converted. They believed in John and they changed their behavior. Now what about us? What is preventing me from following Christ? Which son am I similar to? Who am I in the parable? The first son or the second son? It's interesting to point to the fact that none of the son was perfect. None of the son was perfect in the sense that in our view, understanding of this parable, would have expected one of the two sons to say yes and go immediately, to be consistent with what he said. But instead, none of them was perfect. Definitely the first one would say no, but then change his mind, was the one ended up doing the Father's will, like Jesus said. So we are not perfect, but what son are we? Are we the first son? We are not perfect, but then we realize our shortcomings, we realize we are not following God's plan, and we change our mind and end up doing God's will? Or are we like the second son? With the second son, we prefer to follow our own plans, our own ideas, instead of saying yes to God. Well, it's an important question to ask as we are preparing for Christmas, getting ready for the Christmas celebrations. What is preventing me from doing God's will? And we're not perfect, we're sinners, but do we acknowledge our shortcomings, asking God for forgiveness, and then trying our best to do His will? And today we need to ask for intercession of great saints, Saint John of the Cross, who suffered a lot for the sake of the gospel. He was incarcerated for 2 years. He was a priest, a Carmelite priest, incarcerated for 2 years by his fellow priests in his own religious community. He was put in jail for 2 years. But he bore everything with patience and endurance in order to serve God and not to treat his fellow priests badly. So we need to learn from John the Baptist what it means to John the Baptist, to Saint John of the Cross, what it means to do God's will, to accept God's will with joy and endurance. Take care and have a great day.